Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sports enthusiasts, and those who clicked this video by mistake while looking for cat videos, welcome. Today, we're diving into the roller coaster of ambition, scandal, and heartbreak that is the story of the Rio 2016 Olympics. What was Brazil like before this global fiesta? What's it like now? And most importantly, why does everyone still remember Ryan Lochte's bathroom brawl? To set the stage, let's rewind to pre-Olympic Rio. Circa 2014, Brazil was on top of the world. They'd just wrapped up hosting the 2014 FIFA World Cup, a massive spectacle that had its fair share of drama, excitement, and last-minute construction. Riding the momentum of football fever, they'd also won the bid to host the Olympics, beating out heavyweights like Tokyo, Madrid, and Chicago. Sorry, Obama. Brazil was riding high on the vibe of, we're not just about football and carnival, folks. We can host a serious sporting event, too. They promised the International Olympic Committee a transformative event that would elevate the country. Think economic growth, job creation, improved infrastructure, and possibly even unicorns frolicking on Copacabana Beach. The mood was electric. The announcement party was basically like Carnival, but with fewer feathers and more PowerPoint presentations. It wasn't just about sports. Hosting the Olympics represented a cultural milestone for Brazil. This was their chance to show off their vibrant heritage, music, and food on a global stage. Everyone dreamed of a Rio that would blend its rich traditions with modern progress, a city that would rival the likes of Tokyo and London. But much like the World Cup, the Olympics came with lofty promises that often failed to materialize. The experience of hosting two mega events back-to-back put a spotlight on the country's inability to manage large-scale projects efficiently. Hosting the Olympics is kind of like planning the world's biggest wedding, but your bride is a city that has potholes the size of bathtubs and a public transport system held together by duct tape and prayer. By 2016, the cracks in the plan were becoming very visible. Reports of corruption scandals began surfacing, with allegations that billions of dollars intended for Olympic infrastructure were siphoned off through shady construction contracts and bribes. These scandals only added to the growing discontent among locals. Sure, Rio had its stunning backdrop of beaches, mountains, and Christ the Redeemer doing his best "come at me, bro" pose. But the problems were stacking up faster than Usain Bolt's gold medals. Delays and unexpected costs plagued construction projects, ballooning budgets, and forcing workers into grueling overtime to get venues finished, many just days before the opening ceremony. Meanwhile, the influx of over 500,000 international visitors strained already limited infrastructure. Airports were packed to capacity, public transport systems creaked under pressure, and hotels struggled to meet demand. The city managed to hold everything together, but just barely. The logistical tightrope walk was as thrilling and nerve-wracking as the events themselves. Before the Olympics, infrastructure. Everyone's favorite buzzword. The city promised to build all these incredible venues and improve public transport. The subway line expansion was a key part of this. Spoiler alert, it got done, but only just in time. Despite the rush, this addition was one of the few infrastructure projects that delivered long-term benefits, making daily commutes slightly more bearable for Rio's residents. Many of the workers came from nearby favelas, offering a bittersweet contrast, providing much-needed jobs, but under grueling conditions and low pay. Workers were literally putting in final touches days before the opening ceremony, like students cramming for an exam. Then there's the infamous Olympic Village. It was supposed to be luxurious. Instead, it was like a budget hotel that hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. Athletes were complaining about blocked toilets, exposed wires, and the occasional wildlife encounter. Think of it as camping, but with the constant threat of electrocution. And let's not forget about pollution. Guanabara Bay was set to host the sailing events, but it had so much trash in it, you could practically build a raft out of the floating debris. Adding to the mess, investigations revealed that environmental cleanup funds may have been misused, with significant portions of the budget unaccounted for. The local government promised to clean it up, They managed to fish out some old mattresses and a fridge, but sailors were still dodging dead fish and questionable liquids. On top of all that, Brazil was in the middle of a political and economic crisis. President Dilma Rousseff was being impeached in a scandal that rocked the nation, revealing deep-seated corruption at the highest levels of government. The political turbulence only heightened public scrutiny of the Olympics, as many citizens viewed the Games as a misallocation of resources during a time of national instability. The economy was tanking, and Zika virus fears had people Googling, "Can you catch Zika through a TV broadcast?" It wasn't exactly the vibe you'd want for your big global debut. During the Olympics, despite the chaos leading up to it, the Rio Olympics were, for the most part, a spectacular show. They brought a spotlight to Brazil's rich culture, with the opening ceremony celebrating everything from indigenous traditions to the global influence of samba. This wasn't just a sports event. It was a chance to proudly showcase Brazil's identity on the world stage. Athletes brought their A-game. Michael Phelps made history, Simone Biles redefined gymnastics, and Usain Bolt continued to make running really fast look annoyingly easy. While some athletes thrived, others faced unique challenges. American diver Abby Johnston shared how the polluted water made her question her health every time she competed. Meanwhile, British sprinter Adam Gamili called the Olympic Village basic but charming, a tactful way of describing less than stellar conditions. On the flip side, gymnast Simone Biles expressed her awe at the crowd's energy, saying it was one of the most electrifying experiences of her career. Oh, and speaking of sports, one of Rio's most memorable moments came during the men's soccer final. Brazil faced off against Germany in a nail-biting match that went to a penalty shootout. Neymar, the hometown hero, scored the winning penalty, delivering Brazil its first-ever Olympic gold in men's soccer. The celebration was electric, a much-needed victory for a country that lives and breathes football. But let's be real. The Games weren't just about sports. They were about drama. Remember Ryan Lochte, the American swimmer who claimed he was robbed at gunpoint? Turns out, he and his buddies were just drunk and had vandalized a gas station bathroom. This scandal had everything: a fake robbery, international embarrassment, and Ryan Lochte's terrible apology tour. It was like a soap opera, but with abs. Meanwhile, the locals were not exactly thrilled about the Olympics by this point. The political landscape was still in upheaval, and the Games became a flashpoint for debates over government priorities. Protesters criticized the use of public funds for a global spectacle, while essential services like education and healthcare were underfunded. The disconnect between the flashy Olympic ceremonies and Brazil's social struggles was impossible to ignore. Corruption scandals involving high-ranking officials further fueled protests, as many Brazilians felt the Games had become a symbol of greed and mismanagement rather than national pride. Many felt the cultural and economic promises made to justify hosting the Games had fallen flat. For residents of favelas, who were displaced to make way for Olympic venues, the frustration was even greater, sparking protests that highlighted inequality rather than national unity. After the Olympics, and here's the kicker, the financial aftermath. Hosting the Olympics wasn't just a bad investment, it was a financial black hole. The World Cup had already drained significant resources, and the Olympics only compounded the financial strain. Critics pointed out that Brazil seemed to have ignored the lessons from the World Cup, doubling down on overspending and poor planning. Corruption investigations later revealed that billions of dollars were embezzled, further exacerbating the financial burden left on the city and its residents. Rio reportedly spent a whopping $13 billion on the Games. While some of this was privately funded, the public sector bore the brunt of the costs. Worse, Brazil's post-Olympic analysis revealed that the return on this colossal spending was almost non-existent. Economists estimated that Rio lost billions, with the expected tourism boom and economic growth failing to materialize. Studies revealed that tourism numbers quickly returned to pre-Olympic levels, with many international visitors citing concerns about safety and infrastructure. The jobs created by the Olympics were mostly temporary, and the city was left with a massive bill. Brazil's economy didn't get the glow-up it was hoping for. Instead, it was like buying a designer handbag and realizing you can't afford rent. Now, it's worth noting that Rio isn't alone in losing money on the Olympics. Most cities that host the games end up in the red. Montreal, 1976, they're the poster child for Olympic financial disasters, famously taking 30 years to pay off their debt. Athens, 2004, their billion-dollar Olympic bill contributed to Greece's economic meltdown. Even Beijing, 2008, with its flashy display, reportedly struggled to make back its massive investment. However, not all Olympic hosts are financial flops. Los Angeles, 1984, was a rare success story, thanks to heavy reliance on existing venues and corporate sponsorships. London, 2012, also managed to come out ahead by repurposing venues and leveraging the games to boost urban regeneration. These cities prove that with the right planning, the Olympics don't have to be a fiscal nightmare. So let's get back to Rio and their Olympic hangover. It's like waking up after a wild party and realizing you've maxed out your credit cards and your house is trashed. Post-Olympics, Rio faced the harsh reality of debt and decay. The ambitious promises to transform the city's infrastructure and economy largely fell short, leaving residents with a lingering question: was it all worth it? The shiny new venues started to resemble ghost towns. In fact, as of today, an estimated 9 Olympic venues, including stadiums and sports complexes, remain abandoned, left to decay in Rio's tropical climate. These structures now stand as eerie reminders of grand promises unfulfilled. The Maracana Stadium, where the opening and closing ceremonies were held, fell into disrepair. Vandals stripped it of seats and wiring, and unpaid utility bills meant the power was cut off. It's now more like a post-apocalyptic movie set than a world-class stadium. The Olympic Village? It was supposed to be turned into luxury apartments. Spoiler: it's mostly abandoned. It's basically the setting for the next season of Stranger Things. On the bright side, some infrastructure improvements did stick. The subway line is still running, and Rio's international profile got a boost. Some neighborhoods also saw modest improvements in public spaces, but these were overshadowed by the abandoned venues and unmet economic expectations. Plus, we got some unforgettable Olympic moments and memes out of it. So, was it worth it? That depends on whether you're an optimist, a pessimist, or Ryan Lochte trying to remember what happened that night. So there you have it, the tale of Rio before, during, and after the Olympics. It's a story of dreams, drama, and a whole lot of duct tape. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me on this wild ride. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more sports stories that are as messy as the Guanabara Bay cleanup effort. See you in the next video, and remember, always double-check your Olympic bid promises. Bye.